Welcome to the regular meeting of the Public Health and Safety Committee for May 21st, 2025. I am Jason Chavez, and I am the chair of this committee. Before we call today's meeting to order, we're going to do a short presentation in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. Our colleagues will join up here along with our staff. And then I have us all down to read, okay? Okay. Lene. Okay, we'll talk. I know. We have the actual resolution here. We have more. Does this work? Yes. We're all going to have a share. Cool. All right. We're super excited for today's resolution honoring Mental Health Awareness Month. We'll start off by reading the resolution, and then we'll pass it on to our staff. So, whereas Mental Health Awareness Month is observed every May to raise awareness about mental health, reduce stigma, and promote well-being for individuals and communities. And whereas mental health challenges affect many in our community, about 60% of Minneapolis residents report that their mental health is not good at least one day a month, and 1 in 4 Minneapolis residents report that their mental health is not good for more than 1 week at a time. And
whereas the Minneapolis Health Department acknowledges that May is Mental Health Awareness Month with the theme, "It's okay to not be okay. Break the silence, end the stigma." And whereas Mental Health Awareness Month will also include weekly themes, "It's okay not to be okay," "Man up is not the answer," "It's okay not to be okay," "Speak up, reach out, heal together," and "It's okay to not be okay. Every mind deserves care." And
whereas the City of Minneapolis is committed to supporting initiatives such as the 988 hotline that prioritizes mental health services, education, and outreach to ensure all residents have access to the resources they need to lead healthy, fulfilling lives. And whereas community partnerships, including those with local organizations, healthcare providers, schools, and government agencies, are vital in creating a comprehensive system of care that addresses the mental health needs of all Minneapolis residents. And
whereas city employees are provided resources to improve their mental well-being, such as the Employee Assistance Program, 10 mental health visits covered by insurance at 100%, access to group and private sessions on a variety of topics that impact mental well-being, online support and various mental health resources in the My Health Rewards by Medica program. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the city of Minneapolis declares that May 2025 is Mental Health Awareness Month and calls upon all residents and employees to join in promoting mental health awareness, understanding, and compassion, while also supporting efforts to improve mental health services and resources across our city.
say a word? Yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you everybody for being here, and thank you to the City Council for recognizing May as Mental Health Awareness Month. Mental health and well-being is a thread that runs through all our lives, but where we see mental illness, we also know that even though that's a standalone health issue, it also exacerbates things like poverty and substance use issues. So we're really using this month to bring awareness around mental health and just mental health hygiene. And then also, we want to use this month to really normalize mental health. There is stigma in mental health across many different communities. In particular, we know that there's deep stigma in our East African communities, in our Native communities, and then also in our Latinx communities, which is why our theme, It's Okay Not to Be Okay, as you see on the posters, is translated into all of those languages. And we have those resources in all those languages as well. We are also hoping that this message resonates with every community and that people take the time to learn about the resources that we have to offer, to spend some time thinking about how they can maintain mental health and not wait until there's a mental health crisis. And then we're also looking at the 988 hotline, which is the hotline that anybody can call when they just need to talk or they are in crisis. And we're able to monitor those calls and see what type of impact that this campaign is able to make. And so, again, just really, really grateful to the City Council for helping us recognize May as Mental Health Month. And I also just want to thank all of the staff. We've got Human Resources here, and I know they're going to say a few words. And so they really take care of me and all the other employees here at the city. So thank you for that. And we also have several members of our health department here that have helped work to make May as Mental Health Awareness Month into the campaign that we have today. So thank you very much.
Thank you for recognizing the importance of mental health and mental health awareness for the city and for our employees in particular. We take it very seriously. We've done a lot of work in the last 5 years around expanding resources to be available for our employees so that they are able to take care of themselves in all ways, mental and physical. And we actually kicked it off with a campaign called It's Okay to Not Be Okay back in 2020. So I'm glad to see it coming back around and really recognizing that is how we feel here at the city. It's okay, but it's also okay to take care of yourself.
Anybody else? Cool. Well, we'll set up here for a photo and just want to thank our staff for all their work they're doing this month, but every single month here in Minneapolis. Before we begin the meeting, I want to offer a friendly reminder to all members, staff, and the public that these meetings are broadcast live to enable greater public participation. These broadcasts include real-time captioning as a further method to increase the accessibility of our proceedings to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of the rate of their speech so that our captioners can fully capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask all speakers to moderate the speed and clarity of their comments. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum.
Councilmember Payne.
Present.
Rainville.
Present.
Ellison.
Here.
Palmisano.
Present.
Vice Chair Wansley is absent. Chair Chavez.
Present.
There are 5 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. With that, the agenda for today's meeting is before us. There are 4 items on today's consent agenda. Item number 2 is approving a staff direction to produce a national landscape of municipal public restroom programs. Item number 3 is the appointment of the Homegrown Minneapolis Food Council. Item number 4 is authorizing an increase to a contract with Hennepin County's Attorney's Office for the Sexual Assault Initiative Grant Program. And as we did earlier, and item number 5 is authorizing an extension to a contract with the Department of Justice for a grant related to recruiting police officers. I also want to make sure that I believe in this we will also have the resolution as a part of it. So item number 1 is the Mental Health Awareness Month honorary resolution. With that, colleagues, first person on queue is Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you. I don't have my laptop with me. I have a question of Councilmember Ellison, so I'm going to vote for this, but you had brought up a really interesting point yesterday in our other committee meeting about having some of these legislative directives perhaps go back for a one-on-one conversation with the council members as opposed to presentations by staff. Would you feel that this might be an example of what you talked about yesterday, that we would be best having this come back to us individually?
I have my opinion. I do think that, I understand that the formal way that we get information is to write these legislative directives and these staff directives. I do think that in some instances they can come back to the council member who requested them at least first, so that we know whether it's worthwhile for us to come and have a presentation at a committee. Yesterday we had a presentation at the committee that I felt like could have been a kind of a 30 minute briefing between that, like a council member and the interested staff, or staff and the interested council member. But this one, it's hard to tell. But I just think in general, we should maybe have a practice of having the information come to council members first before bringing it back to committee. And it's also, the reason I say that is not just because I think it, I don't want to be bothered with the amount of time. The actual reason is because I feel like more honest conversations can sometimes happen when we're not on public broadcast, and we can get better answers, and staff who sometimes don't always know what we're getting at when we write a legislative directive can get clarity on what the council actually does and does not want to know during a broadcast presentation, as opposed to us all figuring that out together in real time on public broadcast. So that's my opinion. But I'll sort of defer to the authors on how they want to handle it. But I would certainly advise it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I kind of want to address yesterday's Business Housing and Zoning Committee. So the reason I had drafted that legislative directive was because there was a fee schedule coming to the Business Housing and Zoning Committee. And one of the things that my constituents have been brought up is about the kind of inspections that happen need to improve, and that sometimes there isn't enough staff to make sure that there's more inspections happening across the city. So instead of just my office arbitrarily picking numbers, we thought maybe we could work with staff to have a study and see what we could do more to have more proactive inspections across the city, because that is something that we definitely struggle with, at least in the Phillips community. So that was what the intention of that legislative directive was, and it was meant to be a collaborative effort, which is why we worked on that legislative directive with staff closely to make sure that there was adequate language in place. So I just at least want to add more information about how that work came to be. It was a collaborative effort with staff. Every time I work on legislative directives, I send it to staff to give me their input, their advice, and that's just how I approach it as an elected official. So I at least want to add a clarification to that. Now, when it comes to item number 2, Councilmember Rainville, that you're bringing up, initially this was a legislative directive, and this was as a result of us going to Washington, D.C. and seeing their public restroom infrastructure. As I mentioned earlier, I always send my legislative directives to staff. So with that, administration staff actually included policy and research team in a meeting and said maybe this is more appropriate for the policy and research team that we have in the city. So through that collaboration, we decided to move from a legislative directive to a staff direction. And since then, we've been working on the staff direction with our policy and research team, with our DCCOs at the table, with our staff at the table, making sure that this is collaborative. So I would just mention all the work that happens, because it isn't just because I'm just bringing a legislative directive or a staff direction because I want to. It's because sometimes things take more than 5 hours. And if it takes more than 5 hours, it is a requirement that you have to do a legislative directive per our city rules. So I at least wanted to make sure, So I just want to at least acknowledge that information, right? So this went from a legislative directive to a staff directive to being delayed multiple times now. And my intention was to have this done months ago. But there was a whole process, and my intention was, let's be collaborative. I don't want to make this a complicated issue, and that's why it's been delayed so much. So I at least want to add more information. Councilmember Ellison.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to clarify that I think that there is whether or not a presentation from a staff directive comes back to a committee for a presentation or just back to that as individual council member as more of a private briefing, has nothing to do with the worthiness of the information, right? I think the work we're doing, the information we want, even the presentation yesterday that I sort of wasn't certain I wasn't certain that it needed to come before committee. I still felt like the information was worthy of request. I myself, as in my first year, there was a time in which regulatory services, just to use them as an example, because they were the subject of that legislative directive, they needed a lot of. There needed to be some restructuring happening there, especially early in my tenure. And these were the kinds of questions that got asked. That restructuring happened. A lot of reform happened over in regulatory services in my 8 years, but especially in my first 3. And so it's worthy of the information. But I think, is this always the best platform for us to get the most accurate information? Sometimes there are nuanced questions that just, I hate to say it, but they're just not going to get hashed out on this dais. But I think they can get hashed out either in one or multiple briefings, in a conference room somewhere. So that's mostly what I'm saying, so that when we do get things in front of us, they're sort of the most polished, vetted, and thought through. It's not about what information is worthy to come before committee and what information is unworthy. It's more are we really getting what we need, and would a different setting help us better get what we need?
Thank you. I think when it comes to all these, I'll move all these items for approval. If members want to add themselves as authors as the Mental Health Awareness Month resolution, I would do without objection. Just add everybody on this body as authors. All right. Clerks, every member of this body except Councilmember Wansley, who can't be here today, would be an author on that. More in general about the public restroom staff direction, I think the point of this is just to make sure. I think it's always important to have information. One of the concerns I hear from a lot of residents, at least in my ward, and from some conversations I have with my colleagues, is the type of public bathroom and restroom infrastructure that we have in the city of Minneapolis. There is some public restrooms that we have. I think it's important that we have that information. There are ways that other cities across the country have public infrastructure for restrooms that make it safe, cleanly, and accessible for residents to be able to use it. I think is an important aspect of our city enterprise to figure out how we could have more public restrooms available. But again, I don't have the information of I don't have the ability to say what is the best public restroom for the city of Minneapolis. So I think that having our staff do some of this research would be really helpful for the body to at least consider in the future when this would come back. So this was as a result of some of our colleagues going to Washington, D.C. On behalf of the city of Minneapolis, and we saw some pretty cool restroom access that we got to see in downtown, and we thought that maybe it would be good for us to learn about what other cities across the country are doing. I think when you hear calls of people using the public restroom in people's backyards, next to a business, you got to figure out how to mitigate some of those concerns, and I think this could be an opportunity for us to at least create more accessibility for the rest of the city. So I at least wanted to mention what the point of the staff direction was. And I know that there is language that we're going to be changing in consultation with our city attorney's office, but it's been a long day, and we'll figure that out at full council. So we'll get to that at full council with an amendment on that. But with that, I at least want to give some information on the directive. Anybody else? Okay. So I'll move approval of these items. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. That carries, and the consent agenda is approved. Our next item is receiving and filing an update from the Civil Rights Department on their work. Here to present on that item is Director Michelle Phillips and Director Mikaning Diarra. Come, Director.
Thank you so much, Chair Chavez and members of the committee. Michelle Phillips, Director of Civil Rights. Before I get started, I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to come here today and share about the updates with the department as a whole. I am here, as Chair Chavez said, with our Deputy Director, Kata Mankanandera, as well as our Associate Directors for all of our divisions. We have Associate Director Russell Fujisawa, who oversees our Office of Police Conduct Review. We have our Associate Director, Brian Walsh, who oversees our Labor Standards Enforcement Division, our Associate Director, Manir Bond, who oversees our Complaint Investigations Division, and lastly but not least, we have our Associate Director, Johnny Burns, who oversees our Contract Compliance Division. So yes, the Civil Rights Department has quite a few business lines, and I'm very, very happy and proud that the leadership could be here with us today. So I just want to let you all know that we'll go through the slides and we'll start with our administration, and then we'll go through our contract compliance division, Office of Police Conduct Review, Complaint Investigations Division, and then we'll end it off with our Labor Standards Enforcement Division with additional information. So our administration kind of division is what I like to call our central hub for the Civil Rights Department. When I came July of 2024, there were a lot of silos within the divisions, and a lot of the administrative functions were built into the divisions, and there was no centralized kind of communication. So what we did under our leadership is we created a centralized process where all of the department's work would fall through from the director and deputy director through to the division. So we had one mission, one vision, one goal that worked through our strategic planning. We all worked through our budget items, all of our travel, all of the information, direction, and leadership then comes through that particular division. So it provides a lot of the management, resource delegation, and direction, coordination for the department. In the last several months, our leadership has worked with the Human Resources Department to revamp our mission, vision, and goals, as well as our values and priorities. So this is what we had landed on, and this is a collaborative effort. We also had some surveys that were done so that our staff had some input with what we were going to do moving forward for the department as we reimagine what the Department of Civil Rights looks like. Our mission is for the Minneapolis Civil Rights Department to protect and advance human rights through enforcing civil rights protections with accountability and impartial investigations to empower community. Our vision as we move forward: as the people's investigator, we strive to eliminate civil rights violations in the city of Minneapolis by rooting ourselves in service, justice, and community, and working to remove systemic and institutional barriers that cause harm. Collectively, we decided that our values will be integrity, equity, accountability, justice, and trust. Our priorities as we move forward will be to improve and standardize our timelines, create documents alignment where possible, and standardize operating procedures across all the department's divisions, increase community engagement, and redefine and implement ordinances and policies to make sure that there is a clear direction and alignment for all of our work. This is the old org chart that we had around June, July of last year that I was given. And as most of you guys know, there has been a lot of restructuring and reorganization to make sure that we have optimization of our limited resources and we are effective and efficient in how we execute our duties. What you will now see here is the clear delineation of our divisions as well as the 3 boards and/or commissions that we support. How we were able to kind of transition and realign our work and portfolio is that myself and our deputy director separated our lines of business. So I now oversee directly the Contract Compliance Division as well as the Office of Police Conduct Review. Our deputy director reports up to me, and then she oversees directly the Labor Standards Enforcement Division and the Complaint Investigations Division, This helps us to make sure that we have accessibility to our associate directors and we have the ability to timely respond where we need to. A linear organizational chart was just not something that was feasible for any director, so we had to reimagine what that looks like so that we can support the staff so that they can get the work done and get the answers as quickly as they possibly can. The administration department is right there at the top, and then you can kind of see the business lines as throughout. One thing I also noticed was that it was a very flat organization where the associate directors truly needed some support as far as leads and or supervision. So during the legislative directive a couple of weeks ago, you guys saw the restructuring of OPCR. I will not belabor that, but we did make sure that there are 3 new supervisor positions to help with that body of work. For contract compliance, we created a supervisor position as well to support that body of work and the programmatic work that they need to use as far as the small underutilized business program, so that we can be more intentional about getting more folks to work and apply for that particular program throughout community. So I will go ahead and talk about contract compliance division high level. Of course, this is under my portfolio, but our associate director is here if there are any specific questions that you all may have. The division responsibilities are to ensure that the small underutilized business program businesses have an opportunity to bid and compete on city-funded and federally funded projects. Ensure that contractors are taking affirmative steps to recruit and retain Indigenous people, people of color, and women and minority-owned businesses. We also strive to ensure that contractors classify and pay workers accordingly to the work they perform in city-funded and federally funded projects. Our goals are achieved through active monitoring of contracts, which include interviewing workers and on-site visits. We also certify MBE, Minority Business Enterprises, and WBE, Women Business Enterprise firms through the Minnesota Unified Certification Program. Here is the new structure specific for contract compliance, where you see the new supervisor that is there to help to support the associate director as that work continues to move forward. That individual was just placed in that position within the last month, so they are training up with the associate director to then assume much more of a larger role over both the contract compliance officer ones as well as the contract compliance officer twos that execute the work. We wanted to provide some statistics quickly for you all as far as our quarter one updates. For the construction contracts, we've had 30 contracts year to date in this quarter that equaled up to approximately 71 million that are under active monitoring by the Contract Compliance Division. Professional technical services, it's 27 contracts, approximately 60 million. Goods and services, as well as other services and contracts, 486,000. CPay contracts that we are actively monitoring, 98 million. And any upcoming and in process contracts, there are 6 that we are awaiting and working on processing, which is approximately 61 million. In this year, quarter one, they have certified 16 MBE WBE firms. There have been 73 affirmative action plans approved for quarter one and 6 contracts for wage investigations, which impacted 5 workers, $3,910 recovered, and the average for that per worker was $651. Our focus as we continue to move forward for the Contract Compliance Division is to focus on outreach and education. I do want to let everyone know that today we did start interviewing for a community engagement position for our department, which will be for the entire department and support all divisions within. So I'm super excited about that. Challenges to the affirmative action provisions that are overseen by the Contract Compliance Division, as well as actively working with city attorney and national partners to ensure that we are in alignment with best practices and we are providing the services that we need to make sure that there is accessibility to contracts with the city via our programs, and that there is an opportunity to enforce that work as minority and women-owned businesses as subcontractors on city contracts. I'm now going to talk about the Office of Police Conduct Review. This is, of course, an overview of this division just to ensure that all folks and members of the public kind of understand, again, what the kind of mission, visions, and goals are of our divisions within civil rights. The mission of the Office of Police Conduct Review is to ensure that there are impartial division, and they execute their investigations through an impartial, neutral lens. They also only investigate public allegations of police misconduct by City of Minneapolis police officers. There has been a significant hiring effort, which is one focus, and as of this week, the Office of Police Conduct Review is fully staffed. There's been reorganizational structure to ensure that we are working and executing in the manner that we need to support all of our efforts. That includes the Community Commission on Police Oversight, as we continue to fine-tune some of this work. We're also working on establishing relationships with community partners. Sorry, this is just a closer look at our organizational structure, as Associate Director Fujisawa had kind of went through briefly at the legislative directive previously at Cal. But as you can see, we have the intake division that is specific to ensure that we do not have another backlog as we had before. So we have a supervisor that oversees that division. They triage the cases and complaints as they come in, and then as they're vetted appropriately and overseen by the associate director, those cases will then go through to the investigations supervisor in that unit to be assigned for administrative investigation and complete investigation. This is just a quick breakdown about each of the kind of units, and I won't go through every single one in depth, but as I stated before, complaints can be filed through the intake unit. There are a couple of different ways you can do that. In person, in City Hall. We are working on accessibility right now. I know that previously there were some accessibility challenges for the Civil Rights Department. We're working with the building to make sure that we are accessible to members of the community and that we are out in community that way people know where we are and how they can access us, as well as calling 311 and OPCR directly. They can also file complaints online via email at policereview@minneapolis.gov. Of course, they can, and we have received some snail mail. They can file a complaint via the U.S. Postal Service, and of course, wherever they need, they can walk in and do an intake interview. We want to make sure that folks are accessible and know that our folks are accessible and know that they can get what they need when they come to the OPCR. That unit also largely gathers all of the information that they need to assess the investigation, which could include body-worn cameras, as well as police reports and any other additional information a complainant or witness may have. In the investigations unit, they will then review all of the information that has been gathered and complete the investigation, credibility assessments, as well as any officer interviews, witness interviews, analyze any body-worn camera, and draft the report for supervisory submittal and review. Once those reports are reviewed by the supervisor and approved, then they will be routed to panel review. The panel review provides for community oversight of police misconduct investigations by way of fairly and thoroughly reviewing police investigations. Each panel has 5 members as outlined in the ordinance: 2 police officers, rank of lieutenant or higher, 3 civilians from the Community Commission on Police Oversight, and with the amendment that passed a month and a half ago, we also have supplemental support from the Civil Rights Commission volunteers as well, which has added to our ability to move the work through. Most of you guys already know these stats, as the ALIFA report came out yesterday, and it is very repetitive, but I will say it again, that OPCR started with 234 complaints in the backlog. all of those complaints have been reviewed. And when we say reviewed, we also mean that we assumed a lot of work that came from other individuals. So we had to go back through and kind of audit the work that we assumed to make sure that the intake was done correctly, to make sure that any of the information on any of the reports was completed correctly, they were thorough, that we didn't miss any potential policy violations, and the routing decisions were correct. So when we came in, myself and Associate Director Fujisawa came in, we had to kind of go back through, as well as his supervisors, to take a look. And some of those had to really go back through the routing process. We couldn't just move them forward, which kind of delayed some of the completion of those reviews. But I am happy to say all of those have been reviewed through intake. And currently we have 54 that are in admin investigations. That are actively being investigated. They are assigned and actively being investigated by our investigators within OPCR. Backlog prevention. Of course, staffing up, which is something that we've already done, and assume the duties where we need to assume the duties. Previously, before coming in, there was kind of a chasing the backlog. So they chased it in intake and assigned all of the resources to intake, but then there were no resources to administration and administrative investigations, which means then cases started building up there. So with the new structure, we've made sure that we are intentional and strategic in the way that we delegate the staffing and make sure that work moves in accordance not only with our ordinance, but with the provisions within the settlement agreement. With that, I'll turn it over to our Deputy Director, who will talk about the Complaint Investigations Unit as well as the Labor Standards Enforcement Unit.
Thank you. Welcome. Thanks, Director Phillips. Good afternoon, council members. Happy to be here. So I'm going to discuss the Complaint Investigations Division and the Labor Standards Enforcement Division's work. So the Complaint Investigations Division, their objective is to enforce the Minneapolis Civil Rights Ordinance by receiving and investigating complaints of discrimination. We do have a really nice video on the website that gives a good overview of this, but I know I played that in one of these committee meetings fairly recently, so I'm not going to play that again. But just as a general matter, so to have jurisdiction to investigate discrimination within our Complaint Investigations Division, the discrimination needs to be based on protected class. Protected class generally is something about your identity that you cannot or should not be asked to change. It includes things like race, sex, disability, and more. And we have jurisdiction to investigate discrimination in many different areas of life, including employment, housing, public services, and more. And some of the activities and outcomes to report from this division over the last a year or so is that the division closed 70 cases in 2024 and has closed 20 cases so far in 2025. That is not an indication that we are behind our normal numbers. We do tend to really prioritize that end of year deadline for completing cases, and we tend to spend the first half of the next year really focused on our more complex cases that do sometimes take longer to move through our investigative process. In 2024, the Complaint Investigations Division facilitated a little over $200,000 in monetary settlements to victims of discrimination, and that's a little more than $30,000 so far this year in 2025. And then over last year and into this year, facilitated 28 mediated settlement agreements. So facilitated many more mediations than that, but 28 that were able to reach a successful settlement agreement in a discrimination case. And then the division has really been focused on effective timelines. So that's really been a priority over the last couple of years. Our expectation is that investigators complete investigations within 150 days from when they're assigned an investigation to complete, and we're able to meet that about 70% of the time, certainly with the goal of that continuing to increase that percentage. There are, of course, sometimes certain cases that are particularly complex that do take additional time. Additionally, I want to highlight that the Complaint Investigations Division has facilitated it so that there is no longer a backlog of appeals before our Civil Rights Commission. So when the department and the division makes a decision that discrimination, either no probable cause that discrimination occurred or dismisses the case, a person is able to appeal that, and those appeals are reviewed by our Civil Rights Commissioners. For many years, there was kind of a standing backlog with our commission, but that was cleared a couple of years ago, and we have maintained no backlog in those cases moving moving through. Additionally, there has continued to be an increase in public hearings. These are also before our Civil Rights Commission and our evidentiary hearings in discrimination cases when the department has found probable cause that discrimination occurred, but have not been able to reach a successful settlement agreement with the parties. So those are really time consuming, and we're very appreciative of our commissioners who serve on those, as well as they are a very important part of our adjudicative process. This is just an overview of the staff within our Complaint Investigations Division. So we have an Associate Director, Munir Vaughn, who's here today, who leads this division. And then we have 2 intake coordinators, 2 Complaint Investigation Officer 1s, colloquially we refer to these folks as investigators, and then 2 Complaint Investigation Officer 2s who are tasked with our more complex cases. And some really exciting things happening in the realm of complaint investigations. As you all know, we recently had amendments to the Civil Rights Ordinance pass that include some brand new protected classes, housing status, height and weight, and justice impact status, as well as some bolstered protections within our Civil Rights Ordinance, things like requiring employers to provide religious accommodation, expanding our jurisdiction to investigate pay equity issues, and a few other things, and then some procedural updates that just help us do our jobs to our best ability. And so the division is really focused on what outreach and implementation looks like now that these new protections are here, and we want to ensure that community is aware of them and comes to us when they do experience discrimination in these different areas. So these new amendments will go into effect on August 1st, 2025. Between now and then, we're planning to connect with community partners, service providers, and then certainly reaching out to the community itself. We'll do learning sessions both within the enterprise with everyone that interacts with community and their jobs, and then of course with community as well. And then as these go into effect, we will be tracking complaints received and case outcomes to see kind of what the impact of these new protections is. And kind of in a similar vein, I'm excited to report the outcomes of our efforts in this area for our most recent, prior to these amendments, update to the Civil Rights Ordinance, which is around source of income discrimination. So as of December 2022, we were able to enforce the provision in our Civil Rights Ordinance that bars or prohibits discrimination against those who hold Section 8 housing choice vouchers. So they can no longer be turned away from housing or face different terms and conditions of their housing because they have a Section 8 housing choice voucher. We engaged in a pretty extensive outreach and education campaign around this, both with property owners and landlords, and then with the folks that actually have Section 8 housing choice vouchers. And to that end, have really received many complaints on this basis and have been able to reach many positive case outcomes. We have some of the numbers here. So for 2020, the year of 2024, and then through April of 2025, we received 54 complaints on this basis, issued 31 charges on this basis, closed 48 cases, and settlements were reached in these cases totaling more than $58,000. So we've really seen a response from community that they are aware that these protections exist and that they are coming to us when they're having these experiences, which is certainly very encouraging. Moving now to our Labor Standards Enforcement Division. So the objectives of that division are to investigate reported payroll and sick time violations, to resolve disputes or demand back wages and damages owed to workers, and monitor ongoing compliance with our labor standards. As a general kind of point, the labor standards in the city of Minneapolis include sick and safe time, our city's minimum wage, and overtime and other forms of wage theft, or the prohibition against wage theft. Some key activities and outcomes in this division. In 2024, the division closed 163 cases and collected over $540,000 in settlements, and this impacted 1,367 workers. And to date in 2025, the division has closed 73 cases and collected over $154,000 in settlements, impacting 1,813 workers. We also have staff in our our Labor Standards Enforcement Division monitoring 16 settlements actively in 2025, and those settlements include training and or policy changes to ensure that future violations hopefully do not happen. And then in addition to that kind of standard case investigative work, our staff in our Labor Standards Enforcement Division has provided 251 technical assistance and know your rights consultations over 2024 and so far in 2025. This is the structure of our Labor Standards Enforcement Division. We have our Associate Director, Ryan Walsh, who is here today. We have an intake coordinator, 3 complaint investigation officer 2s, again, colloquially known as investigators. We have 1 complaint investigation officer 1, and then we also have an administrative analyst 2 who supports a lot of the programmatic work that runs through our Labor Standards Enforcement Division. So some key milestones, a couple really exciting things kind of in this realm of work, especially over the last few months. So one of the biggest milestones is the division reached $2 million in back wages and damages recovered since its inception, which is a really big number and really demonstrates the impact that this work has, particularly for workers across the city. And then in addition to that monetary amount, the division over the last 7 years, which is how long it's been in existence, has provided 4,600 free consultations to both business owners and workers. And then since 2018 has resolved 1,000 cases involving 16,000 workers have been investigated, and 393 settlements have been reached, which often include, in addition to these monetary amounts and back wages, policy changes for all parties involved. So again, really pushing that compliance into the future and the hope that these violations do not continue to occur in particular workplaces. An additional really big milestone is the Labor Standards Enforcement Division was a part of a referral of a case that we investigated that was referred to the Hennepin County Attorney's Office and pursued, and they did, we saw the first ever felony wage theft conviction. This sent a powerful message and serves as a deterrent to anyone cheating the system, undercutting honest employers, and stealing wages from workers. So this really is an important milestone of the division as well. So then moving on to a couple other really important projects that run through our Labor Standards Enforcement Division. We have our small business compliance pilot and then also co-enforcement. So the small business compliance pilot has trained community-based bookkeepers who are now equipped to move forward and identify potential labor noncompliance with the community business owners that they work with. In 2025, our partners in this project successfully trained 30 community-based bookkeepers in labor standards compliance, and hopefully are really going to be resources in community to especially our small business owners to understand what our city's labor laws are and how to comply with them moving forward so that it doesn't have to turn into a situation where complaints are being made and where our Labor Standards Enforcement Division has to do investigations, though of course we will always do that when needed. And then also co-enforcement. So the objective of co-enforcement is to empower vulnerable low-wage workers to learn, spread the word, and enforce Minneapolis labor standards through prevention, intervention, and by reducing barriers to access city and legal services. So we executed a new contract for co-enforcement this year in 2025, and that new contract includes new performance metrics tracking types of worker outreach, training, complaint navigation, and support that's provided by our co-enforcement partner, and has set the goals that are here on the slide. The goal to meet with 3,000 workers across 300 workplaces in the city of Minneapolis, hold 30 trainings for 500 workers, complete intake on potential complaints for 150 workers, and provide ongoing support for 75 workers. So we look forward to being able to report out some of those, the meeting, hopefully, of those goals in the future. And then moving beyond our divisions to our really important partnership and work with our boards and commissions. So we provide the staff support in the Civil Rights Department to our Civil Rights Commission and our Community Commission on Police Oversight, as well as the Workplace Advisory Committee. We're very appreciative of the work that our board and commission members put in. We understand that they do this in a voluntary capacity, and yet this is a lot of time and effort that they put into this work. So we really want to call that out and thank them for their work and dedication in this area. To highlight a couple things from our Civil Rights Commission, they really were able to partner, I think, very effectively, especially with our council authors on the amendments to the Civil Rights Ordinance, and actually brought forth the idea of including height and weight as a protected class. So that's a really big accomplishment, recent accomplishment of the Civil Rights Commission. They're really, I think, tangible involvement in really impacting what gets included in city ordinance. So that's a really big thing and something that I know they are all very proud of. I again will highlight that we have seen an increase in public hearings before our Civil Rights Commission, which has really called on them to invest a lot of time in those cases, and we're very appreciative of that. They are working on a 2025 youth essay contest. They did one in 2024 for middle schoolers that was really quite successful, and I think a really valuable way for the commission to engage with community. So they look forward to doing that again in 2025. And then they're also in plans to celebrate their 50th anniversary. The Civil Rights Commission has been around for 50 years as of this year. So we're excited to partner with them to make sure that we acknowledge and celebrate that accomplishment as well. Moving to our Community Commission on Police Oversight. So there really has been a lot of investment, especially in training, to make sure that the folks that are on the CCPO really have the tools they need to do what is required of their role effectively. And that has included internal trainings facilitated by either the Civil Rights Department or other partners across the enterprise, and then also significant training with NACOL, which is the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, and really the premier association around this work, has provided valuable training as well. And then, of course, a focus on the review panel work that runs through our CCPO. So working cases through our entire investigative process has, of course, been a really top priority for the department, and our CCPO plays a really valuable role in that they serve on these review panels. So in 2024, they were able to review 19 cases, but already in 2025, even though we're not even halfway through the year, there are 26 cases in. So we really appreciate their time and dedication to those cases. And then I'll also highlight the CCPO held a public hearing on police policies last week, which is another one of the things that they are entrusted and required to do under the ordinance, and so that was successful as well. I will highlight our really big focus on training across the Civil Rights Department. We really have wanted to engage in ensuring that our staff have all of the tools they need to do their jobs as effectively as they can. And so to that end, we have had folks engage in many different kinds of trainings across the different divisions. So that has included trainings also with the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement for our staff, in addition to members of the CCPO, training in internal affairs investigations, which of course coincides with our Office of Police Conduct Review work, mediation training to ensure we can provide mediations in-house when necessary and appropriate, and then sending folks, I was actually just at this myself yesterday, to the Employment Law Institute to make sure our labor standards and complaint investigation staff have all of the tools and are up to date on all of the developments in the many different areas of employment law that touch our work. And then just to highlight, I think we've covered some of this as we've gone through the whole presentation, but our kind of overview of what we would consider our biggest achievements of 2025 as the Civil Rights Department is that we've engaged in a pretty extensive process, as Director Phillips already highlighted, creating an updated mission, vision, and values for the department that really had buy-in, I think, and involvement of folks across the department at all the different levels. Continued support of the pilot program to support Minneapolis small business compliance with the city's labor laws. That's our small business compliance project. Assisting the city clerk's office with providing more direction and support for our community commission on police oversight and the important work that they do. Continuing to work to meet the terms of the Minnesota Department of Human Rights Court Enforceable Settlement Agreement. We're working on a new case management system for our Office of Police Conduct Review, and that work continues. And then passage of those amendments to the Civil Rights Ordinance are all really things we want to lift up that we're proud of, and also that we appreciate our staff and partners for all their investment in assisting make that happen. And then future plans we want to highlight, reviewing and updating quality assurance protocols, policies, and procedures for the department, just to make sure that we're doing our jobs in the best way that we can, and also in a cohesive way across the whole department versus by division vision, that moving out of silos, as Director Phillips noted. Centralization of the administrative work for the department for greater financial oversight and accountability, which she also touched on. And then proactive community engagement and education, which we hope to have someone in a position that is very much focused on that here in the coming weeks. With that, I will close. Thank you so much. We are very happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'll see if any of my colleagues are on cue. Otherwise, I can ask a few questions that I have. Thanks so much for the presentation. It's really helpful. I think you mentioned that there has been at least $2 million in recovery of wages. I think that was since 2017. Is that correct? Or would that be
2018.
20?
From 2018 to now.
Great. And you can follow up with me. Wondering what that number has been since 2022, but I don't have to get that answer today. It could be just a follow-up through a memo. Cool.
We'd be happy to provide that. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. And then I did have a question about the source of income discrimination charges. Are those charges ever made public, or how do people know who the people that are being charged are?
Chair Chavez, thank you for the question. So we can't ever share any information on open investigations. I would say we should consult with our city attorney's office. There is some public available documentation after a case is closed, but there's no repository or proactive sharing of that information, but some of it would be subject to a data request if we were to receive one.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you. And then I'd just like to say thank you for the presentation, all the work that civil rights staff did, including you, both of you, and our staff at the Civil Rights Department on the Civil Rights Ordinance. I think it was a good work that happened, and it was incredible to have engagement with the Civil Rights Commission and how they were able to influence just policymaking in this process. So thank you all to your staff and yourselves included on that work. So that's all the questions I have. I'll pass it to Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this presentation. I have two different topics. The first came up about housing discrimination. Now, through my office, I have recommended people to civil rights when they feel they've experienced different types of housing discrimination. And I'm just curious, where do most of your complaints, how do people navigate that? Do they know to call you? Do they know, from an outside website, or do you get these kind of routed to you from 311 or council member offices, or is there any kind of insight about that part of this?
Thank you for the question, Chair Chavez. Councilmember Palmisano. There's many ways to make complaints, and this actually goes for all of our divisions that investigate complaints. So you can make a complaint through 311. You can file a complaint on our website. We have the forms available in all the city's main languages, and discrimination. So if it's a housing discrimination issue, police misconduct. So if there's a complaint of police misconduct, you can make that online. Labor standards, same thing. You can also walk into our office during normal business hours, and you can fill out a paper form if that's what you're more comfortable with. We certainly, want to be as accessible as possible, and we want to continue to build knowledge and understanding across community that these services exist. And so that is something we're really excited to have someone coming on who's going to be really focused on community engagement and ensuring even more of that information gets out so folks know how to access our services. But we do hope that we provide many different avenues that make folks as comfortable as they can be.
Through the chair to Councilmember Palmisano, I would say that we're also partnering with NCR to make sure that all of these materials and information is also translated for members of marginalized communities or folks where English is not their first language. So we're trying to be very intentional with that. I will highlight that Council President invited our office to have a presentation at one of his ward meetings, and we have been working with and trying to coordinate also with other different council members to be able to meet kind of folks where they are as we partner with other CBOs. So we are also very willing and excited if any of the council members would like us to come and do any presentations, either specific to a division, specific to housing, any or all of our divisions that we have at any of your ward meetings, if that is the pleasure.
So if I may try to answer my own question, what you're saying is there isn't one particular way that these complaints often come in. It's not more or less through 311 or through one of our offices or anything like that.
I think it's online would technically be the top. Yeah, anecdotally, we can share that online is probably the highest number of complaints, but we'd have to go back and verify that just to be sure. I'll also add, because you asked about housing discrimination specifically, we have, connected with and have relationships with different community service organizations that work with folks that might be experiencing these things. So like we have a relationship with Minneapolis Public Housing, we have a relationship with Legal Aid, other places that might do those kind of initial intakes or be aware of situations happening. A good example is in the source of income discrimination, particularly with folks that have Section 8 housing choice vouchers. Often they work with a housing navigator as they're looking for housing with Minneapolis Public Housing. So we've trained all the housing navigators to ensure that they know that this is a protection that exists. And we actually have complaints that come directly from those housing navigators often, who they've watched something unfold that they feel like is a possible violation of the ordinance, and then they'll reach out to us. So there are other kind of ways that folks come at it, not just necessarily a person filling out a form and sending it in, just happening to know that we're there, but also these other service providers and community partners that are also aware.
Thank you. That's helpful. And by the way, I have seen actually the Civil Rights Department kind of promoted on bulletin boards and rec centers across the city. I go all over the city to rec centers from my kids' sports things, and it wasn't anywhere nearby in southwest Minneapolis. I don't really remember where it was, but I was pleased to see it. My other questions are actually about OPCR. I said this at another presentation, and I'll say it again. Civil Rights has done amazing work to reduce the backlog of OPCR complaints. Of the, I think it said on the slide, I think it was slide 14, of the 54 remaining backlog cases, what is your expected time frame to complete these? I know it said they were active investigations. How long do you think that will take? And I assume that it varies depending on the type of complaint, but in terms of being current with a more reasonable list of complaints to manage in a regular way, how long do you think it will take until we will clear out that backlog?
So for the 54 that remain from the backlog, through the chair to Councilmember Palmisano, we are anticipating completing the OPCR investigatory work by August 31st of this year. That is our anticipated goal. We are on pace to be able to hit that goal. And I say OPCR investigatory work, meaning it has gone through the supervisory review and has been approved by the associate director, but then it still has to go through the panel review process and then be routed to the chief. So some things are a little bit out of our control as we're working to stand up a little bit more as far as the capacity for the panel reviews. And I do want to correct something. Right now we're at 31 year to date. We've had a couple more panels since we put this slide together. So I really want to highlight all the dedicated commissioners that sit on panels, and as they do panels as well as their committee assignments and their commission meetings. So it's a huge lift. I know that's more of an answer, but to answer your question directly, we anticipate August 31st, 2025.
That's great. And if I may just add one last question, and I might have taken this from an old slide that I looked at yesterday. There were 180 others that were reviewed and had completed investigations. Are they waiting for review panels, or what is their status?
No. So some cases, as we talked about the intake review process, so it was 114. Some of those, we have to review all of them. Some cases were duplicates. So, for example, if there's a high profile case and it's on either social media or on the news, multiple people will call in and say, hey, did you guys see this? Did you see it? Did you see it? I want to make sure you guys have it. So we may get multiple complaints about one incident, which might be like 5 or 6. So we will keep one, of course, and then kind of do a relation to that one. And then those will be closed as duplicates. Or there may be expedited discipline, which will then go routed if there is just clear and convincing evidence that we have on BWC that the alleged officer committed the alleged thing. And it's like, dude, come on, there's nothing to really go through, and then we will write that directly up. So those dispositions are a little bit different, of course. Jurisdictions, right? If they see something happen and they think it may be a Minneapolis police officer and it may be another jurisdiction that we do not have authority to investigate over, we will route them to the appropriate entity that can investigate that and then close that due to lack of jurisdiction. So that's how some of those were disposed of.
Thank you. I really appreciate this additional context. So thanks. That's all my questions.
All right, thank you. No one else is on cue, so thanks so much for the presentation. It was very helpful.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You all have a good day.
You too. Both of you. Thanks. Seeing no further questions, I'll direct the clerk to receive and file that update. Our final item is receiving and filing a report from the Policy and Research about the Fire Department recruitment, including specifics on hiring female candidates. Here to present on this item is Dwight Miller. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Everybody see the slide? Good afternoon, Chair Chavez and Public Health and Safety Committee members. I'm excited to represent the Policy and Research team to discuss the Fire Department recruitment and retention report that will be filed and received later on today, along with a special attention to female firefighters. So just to ground us, just in the legislative background and staff direction. This staff direction is focused on really a few components, but two major components within the report, three major components within the report. The first one is just kind of a nationwide analysis of both firefighter recruitment and also female firefighter recruitment. Along with that, kind of going into Minneapolis's hiring processes and along with of recruitment and how it really is geared towards female firefighter recruitment. And last but not least, the landscape analysis to be able to see what's happening across the country, some of the promising practices, some of the promising, I would call it secret sauce between each of the fire departments that were profiled to be able to see what we can steal, beg, borrow, and steal for Minneapolis Fire Department. This was a very exciting report to be able to dig into, and I'm excited to be able to share what I've learned for these past 2 months. Some caveats. One thing that you will notice within the staff direction, but you also might have noticed within the report, is that the report is focused on recruitment heavily, more so than retention. Talking to fire departments across the country, oftentimes I would say, let's talk about recruitment, and we would talk about recruitment for 45 minutes, and then I talk about retention, and I said, well, that's not as much of a priority. We're talking about recruitment. And so to be able to reflect what the sort of body politic prioritizes, I prioritize recruitment heavily, but in the report it goes into some ideas around retention, particularly with female candidates. So without further ado, given some national trends and barriers and challenges within firefighter recruitment and female firefighter recruitment. So nationwide, departments are struggling with recruitment. They're not receiving as many applications. A lot of it has to do with historically, fire departments have used lineage and family ties to be able to recruit new firefighters and refill the pipeline. So a lot of fire departments, they are just now kind of working their muscles to actively doing outreach and recruiting, particularly to recruit to communities and or reflect the communities that the fire departments serve that maybe been historically marginalized. This is extended to female firefighters and female candidates. Nationwide, when it comes to career firefighters, 4 to 5% of career firefighters identify as women. And so if you think about it, you can see it, you can be it, which is a term that I'm going to use over and over again. If you can see it, you can be it. Oftentimes when a person is thinking about careers that they're looking at, they're looking to see if they can see themselves within that career. And particularly for female candidates, they're not seeing female firefighters nationwide represented. This kind of adds into some of the current recruitment barriers that I was able to find just through the landscape analysis. The first big one is just limited exposure. Talking to recruiters, oftentimes when they talk to potential women candidates, it's the first time hearing about firefighter firefighting as a career option, as a long-term career option for them. Also, along with that, there are some misperceptions of the job requirement. We understand firefighters go into burning buildings and save lives. That is what the media kind of focuses on. But a lot of the times, the work of the care work, going into traumatic events, being a person who is a representative and a leader in the community are not as seen as going into burning buildings. And so people almost self-select based on the skills that they see, based on the misperceptions of the job requirement. And lastly, one of the other barriers, particularly when it comes to female candidates, is the physical abilities test. Now, Minneapolis Fire Department uses a nationally recognized test called the Candidates Physical Ability Test, or CPAT. Every career fire department has a physical ability test. The CPAT is sort of a national best standard, backed by the International Association of Firefighters and the International Association of Fire Chiefs. So in the landscape analysis, anyone except for one of them, which I kind of use as an honorable mention, uses the CPAT for comparisons. But with the CPAT is a pass-fail time test with 8 events that are really geared towards firefighting. So we're not talking about bench pressing and squatting. We're talking about raising a ladder or carrying a hose or dragging a dummy. These are things that are kind of aligned to the fire service. Now, the one thing with the CPAT in particular is nationwide, there is generally a gap between men and women who are able to pass the CPAT. That is not because, I want to be very clear, that is not because of innate ability. A lot of it has to do with the CPAT was geared towards the biomechanics of men. And a lot of the times what is needed is technique and training specific to the biomechanic of female candidates, and then they're able to be as successful as the male candidates. So I want to make sure I've expressly put that in there because we want to see some interventions that are actually able to address the CPAT gap that we're seeing nationwide. Some of the things and the barriers nationwide that we see also in Minneapolis' fire department locally. So Minneapolis Fire Department expressed a trend in decline in applications similar to nationwide. 2021, the last application cycle, they saw 688 applications, and just through anecdotes and discussing it with firefighters that worked through from the 90s to the early 2000s, they used to see thousands of applications. So right there, we already have just a smaller pool of applicants to be able to fill the 20 to 25 slots in the Fire Academy. Along with that, we see, and this is something I know some council members have expressed in the 2022 resolution, where they talked a little bit about this decline in firefighters, but currently Minneapolis has 8% Minneapolis Fire Department are female firefighters. And this is a decline from around 15% in 2002, which amounts to 70 women firefighters in 2002 to 35 currently in 2025. A lot of this comes from, if you look at the chart, some of just the hiring practices, which kind of leads into sort of, once again, because they're not there to be seen, they're not there to actually be as a mirror to other folks who want to be able to be a recruit, creating a negative feedback loop. But really, there was just a lapse spin prioritizing hiring female candidates. I think one person I talked about the Occam razor of this issue, where it's just like, in order to hire more female firefighters, you should prioritize hiring more female firefighters. And particularly within the years of 2005 and 2017, there were 6 years where there were 0 female candidates hired in the fire department, versus if we're looking back from 1986, whenever we first hired our first female firefighter in the teens. That is very stark, and what happened is we weren't able to refill the pipeline, and that is how we get from 15 to 8 in 2025. Along with that, there's a limited volume of female candidates. In this previous application cycle, in 2021, there was only 13% of applicants who were female applicants. So even if they were to hire proportionally to the applicants they received, it still wouldn't be enough to make up for the 6 years of not hiring 0 female firefighters and candidates. And then lastly, similar to nationwide, there's a CPAT gap. Specifically in this most recent 2021 kind of civil service list, 86% of men pass the CPAT, and then compared to 41% of women. I think what's even more telling is within the CPAT, the way it's structured is that there's an orientation, and there's 2 practice tests, and then you take the CPAT. Between the orientation and actually taking the CPAT, around 47% of female candidates drop out during that time. student. So they're not even attempting the test. And I think a lot of that has to do with going back to just having the proper training, but also being able to build the proper confidence to be able to actually feel confident to take the test in the first place. So these are some of the headwinds. I want to give a second to breathe because I feel like I've been saying a lot of negative things, but Minneapolis also has so much to offer and so many promising programs even within our own city. And one of those I want to really highlight is the EMS Pathways Academy. This is a paid internship that allows for participants, generally I would say young professionals like 18 to early 20s, being able to go and learn about EMS professions, particularly the fire profession. This is a partnership between the Minneapolis Fire Department and also the Hennepin EMS. And at the end of this program, you get paid as an intern. You also are EMT certified, which is a requirement for you to be a firefighter, along with also getting preferential points for when you go into the general hiring process. So this is promising for several ways. It allows for exposure at an early age, low barriers for exposure. Also, it allows for candidates to learn about what the job is, so we're able to prevent misperceptions. And also, with that, if you look down at the last bullet, female participation averages around 30% per cohort compared to the 13% of folks who apply just to the general pool. There we see a promise there because it's the low barrier of entry to be able to just see whether it feels right. And through all that, you're getting exposure there. So this is a promising practice currently right now that we're currently doing. This has been going on since 2021. And throughout all the interviews, this was the one people keep on coming back to. So that is sort of what's happening in our own backyard. I do want to say that Minneapolis is both a leader in the field because we are double the national average, but also there's a lot of things that we can learn from, which is where we get into the national landscape analysis and some of the promising practices that I was able to find and be able to reveal within the report. So positive trends. So remember, we are talking about three things. We're talking about how do we gain exposure, how do we make sure that folks are kind of correcting misperceptions, and how do we address this CPAT problem and the CPAT passing gap. And so really I kind of saw three different positive trends and programs. First, having active affinity groups and support female firefighters, comprehensive recruitment efforts, early exposure to firefighting, physical ability test training, having a supportive application process, along with having clear and robust pathways, which is something that Minneapolis already has, but I have another example from another entity that I think we can learn a lot from. So with that being said, starting off with having active female affinity groups. So this helps with retention, right? Having a sense of belonging, having an affinity group helps build a sense of belonging. But more importantly, when it comes to recruitment and increasing the number, is having an affinity group allows for the fire department to extend its reach in recruiting. In San Francisco, which has 15% female firefighters among its service, it is often seen as a national leader. Everybody I spoke with said, talk to San Francisco. And what San Francisco said was their secret sauce was the United Fire Service Women. They're an affinity organization that is independent of the San Francisco Fire Department. Also, along with that, they coordinate very strongly with the San Francisco Fire Department. And this entity, they host boot camps. They go do this coordinated outreach. They are on their website. They actually have resources that are there to help with the Academy's success, to help with the CPAT training, to do all the things needed in order to become a firefighter, to come with the pathway. And along with that, they're able to really leverage the resources of San Francisco Fire Department. So the fire department isn't telling them what to do, but they empower them to do the things they need to do. So if they need to borrow equipment, borrow facilities, they're kind of the wind in their sails versus being headwind. So having this coordination has been proven important for San Francisco, and also what it does is it helps bolster their recruitment capacity, which is kind of related to Seattle Fires Connect program, which is all about coordinated recruitment initiative. Fire Connect program, which is a very new program, I think it came out in 2022 for this current class. It is really based on three prongs and three coordinated efforts. First, just very strong, deep partnerships with community members and community organizations. So realizing their limitations of not being able to see everybody, they built deep partnerships with 120 Seattle community organizations to kind of be each one teach teaching those organizations about here's our hiring processes, here's why folks should be fire department firefighters, and then using those organizations as mouthpieces. So it's extending their reach by 120 organizations, and also being able to expose themselves to traditionally underrepresented groups within the fire service. Along with that, they leverage higher education partners, particularly with North Seattle College, and also they're doing the going out, having people touch the equipment, see the equipment, to really be face-to-face with folks and interacting with them. And one of the more innovative portions of the Fire Connect program is the online presence that they're able to have. They have a podcast called Fire Connect. They have a panel discussion with 3 firefighters, and this allows people to, once again, get the exposure to firefighting as a concept, but also really dig into some of the misperceptions that are about firefighting. And their first episode actually profiled women firefighters. And so, once again, if you're looking in Seattle and you're like, I want to become a woman firefighter in Seattle, this thing comes up on YouTube. So once again, leveraging multiple nodes of communication. The Fire Connect program here in Seattle exposes folks to a lot of what the fire department is all about. In Portland, they really do a lot with working to try to get early exposure, particularly with young girls, young women 16 to 22, in the Portland Metro Fire Camp. So Portland Metro Fire Camp is a separate entity of Portland Fire and Rescue. However, they work very closely together because the Fire Metro Camp includes all fire departments in the Metro, instead of it just being about Portland. But one of the cool things about this fire camp is that it is run completely by female firefighters who plan it, who run it, and so it is an all-woman event. And within that, they're able to build connections, build mentorships, and there have been some firefighters who have been on the Portland Fire Rescue who they said were part of the Portland Metro Fire Camp. A lot, you want to see that cost, and you're going to be like, ooh, that's a very big cost. A lot of that is actually in-kind cost. So that goes to the amount of investment that these women are making in order to put on this camp, which is around $200,000 of in-kind donation. So this early exposure, right? We're talking about early exposure again. We're talking about how do we build down those misconceptions. I do want to touch a little bit on the physical abilities test, which is kind of close by. It's not necessarily in our backyard of Minneapolis, but it is in St. Paul. St. Paul's Twin Cities Female Firefighter Fitness Program is a monthly fitness program started by 3 St. Paul firefighters to be able to create a enriching environment for women to go in, be taught how to pass their physical abilities tests by women and women firefighters, but also connect with other candidates who are interested in becoming firefighters. I will say the one caveat to this is that St. Paul's physical abilities test is not the CPAT. However, they are very, very similar. The biggest difference is the evaluation of the CPAT is pass-fail, while theirs is evaluated based on time. So the higher time, the better your points will be. But outside of that, they're still learning how to raise ladders, and you learn the different biomechanics needed in order to pass physical abilities test. Denver is an interesting case because I'm not going to come here and say, here's a program that Denver Fire Department does. What they really do is really kind of an ethos. They really work on how do they support the application process. So a lot of the times with the application process, we're talking about how do we evaluate the best candidate? But Denver uses it as an opportunity to be able to really build in equity and build in differentiation by adding support. So they have clear communication. They also have practice mock interviews and also CPAT practice tests. But within that, they encourage their firefighters who are volunteering to go in and really look and try to build connections and relationships. So this could be, hey, mock interview, you should iron your shirt. You should not have a wrinkled shirt for your mock interview. Or it could be as, oh, the way you're doing that, I feel like you're copying somebody, but this is how it's going to be better for you and your biomechanics. Those are the things that they say as their secret sauce to like how they have successful candidates, and really thinking about the application process as a way of supporting people who want to become firefighters, whether it's within your municipality or somewhere else, is really just making sure they feel like they have their back and they feel the sense of family that firefighting is. So Denver does a really good job of just kind of not necessarily building a program, but building a mindset, an equity mindset within the application process. Kind of bookending with Pathways program, we have the DC Fire Cadet program. So this program has been around for 27 years. It is very much a finely tuned machine from all the pieces of evidence that I'm able to observe. It is competitive just like the EMS Pathways Program Academy. The one big difference, three big differences. The first difference is a year-long program versus it being a 12-week program. The other difference is that it guarantees employment with DC Fire and Emergency Services versus an EMS Pathways program, it's not guaranteed. And then the third thing I want to emphasize is that throughout the year-long process, they're giving CPAT training to all of the cadets that are in this fire cadet program. So by the time they get to the end of it, they are able to pass the CPAT. So having that long runway, that long training, that intensity of being able to prepare for it allows them to be able to not see gender gaps within this program on passing the CPAT. It is expensive. However, there's a lot of things in the model that I think we can learn from as far as being able to implement it here in Minneapolis. So potential options for consideration, we could boost community visibility and engagement, being able to be out there and be seen throughout the community, and also partnering with community organizations. You probably noticed throughout all of these examples, there's always partnerships. Partnerships are so important. So building those community partnerships to be able to extend the reach of what you're able to outreach. Buttress affinity groups, really working with the Minneapolis Women's Firefighter Association and building a relationship between that organization and Minneapolis Fire Department to be able to empower them to do the outreach that they need in order to build a more, I would say, belonging environment for women in Minneapolis Fire Department, and also build out the outreach to potential women firefighters in the Minneapolis community. Deepen candidate support, which is I mentioned in Denver Fire Department, making the candidate process be a process where there's learning and growth happening instead of it being purely evaluative, and along with expanding firefighter career pathways, being able to have more participants, and also have more support throughout that to be able to have better prepared candidates for the firefighter cadet process. There lies the highlight reel of my report. I encourage you to read the report in its entirety, but I point to the chair to ask any questions from me.
Thanks so much for the presentation, Dwight, and the work that Parchin did on this. I'll first pass it to Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a number of questions, but I can pause and have you move on to somebody else. First off, I want to point out that Chief Melanie Rucker has been in charge of recruitment for the past 10 years. Did you speak with her for this report?
Yep, I spoke with Chief Rucker, Assistant Fire Chief Rucker, also Chief Tyner, and also a few other former firefighters and current firefighters within the Minneapolis Fire Department.
That's good to know when I see Chief Tyner in the audience. Do you know how many women candidates applied versus how many actually passed the physical exam, the CPAT exam? I understand we've had plenty of women apply, but what percentage of them are passing the CPAT exam?
41%.
I know because I've literally trained with some of them. I've been through some CPAT training myself. And lots of our firefighters are actively engaged in an affinity group themselves. I'd like to have this discussion for sure. I've been interested in it for a long time, but it feels a little weird that we say we care about this without looking at our own numbers. And I know that Chief Rucker would have the numbers in terms of how many female candidates that do we have, how many of them are passing the CPAT. You just gave me a percentage. I mean, you have to pass this particular part of the exam, or we can say we don't want to have this as part of our training program, but you have to pass this one particular part of the exam that is, it's more than skills development, right? And I see General Nixon in the audience, Christy Nixon. She's the one that taught me much of what I know about this topic. She has worked incredibly hard to establish a pipeline in Minneapolis, and I think I can tell from the look on your face, it's fair to say that you've spoken with General Nixon?
Yeah.
And
yes, ma'am.
In fact, she was interested in targeting audiences from my last conversation, like college sporting events. Some of the most amazing young women that I've met in the fire department were Division I athletes in college, and that seems to be an appropriate recruiting pipeline so that we can up the probability that the CPAT exam is cleared, but also there is a affinity group that is meant to help train people, because it is a trainable test to some extent. I've gotten a lot of tips over the past couple of years from General Nixon and some of the other women firefighters. I also understand, just anecdotally, that about 25% of our last hiring list was women. Does that comport with your research on this matter?
When you say hiring, the hiring list, are you talking about those selected on the civil service list?
The people who passed the CPAT have passed all the exams and are eligible for hire. I understand about 25% of them are women.
Mm-hmm.
Is that consistent with your research into this?
When you say yes, if you're saying, sorry to the chair, a lot of while 25% of the list are women, I'm thinking about the success of women candidates from the time that they applied through. And that's what the numbers I was reflecting on.
It's a lot lower, the numbers that you're reflecting on.
Yeah.
So I'd like to actually be working with our city's numbers. I don't believe that's necessarily a question about outside research. I think it's more specific for the fire department themselves. So maybe a logical follow-on, Mr. Chair, might be to get some of that information from the fire department themselves, or Chief Tyner, if he wants to opine on this. Chief, just to be clear, I don't expect you to have these kinds of numbers off the top of your head, but I am deeply curious what both you and General Nixon might be thinking about this report right now, because I have some of my own thoughts.
Yeah, I do have them more or less off the top of my head. So he's looking at a number of years, and over the number of years, 41% is the average. In this last one, though, we had just under 100 women applicants, and you're right, about 25, 26 on the final list. So it was a little bit lower during this last test cycle, the passing rate.
Yet it seems to be much higher than the national average in terms of women going into firefighting. Is that accurate?
So we've been able to hire more than the national average, for sure. I do think there's still a lot of room for improvement, both in the recruiting and in our success rate with the CPAT test. But yes, we're doing better than fire departments are doing nationally, but I still think there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah, and I agree, and I've been really intrigued by the things that I've heard from other women firefighters, and particularly maybe focusing on whether it's younger people in sports that are girls and women in college sports, even in the rec sports of college. It seems like a really appropriate time to be training for this. Not that you can't. I mean, I almost passed the CPAT test, I'll just have you know, with some training myself. But I guess we'll see. We'll see what this year brings.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And Dwight, I do have a question. Well, one, again, I think it's important that we got this presentation because I think it highlights an important topic facing our city. I think the presentation talks about that female firefighters only make up 8% of the Minneapolis Fire Department here. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I just want to highlight 8%. Yeah. I don't want to be better than the national average. I want to be equitable. I want to have good standards in the city of Minneapolis, and that means having more firefighters in the department. This isn't a question for you, Dwight. I'm just saying that in general, when we have 8% of our firefighters only being women, if that's correct right here, it needs to be higher, right? So as I'm looking at this presentation, I'm seeing all these other programs that other cities are doing. I think it would be helpful to at least look into them and see what we can do to only increase that number in the city, because I think it's important. And I think that's a topic that I think we should dive deep into in this committee. Go ahead.
I also think that, with the slide, what Minneapolis is really confronting is that there was just a history of there not being higher, female firefighters not being hired. And so a lot of the things that I was able to see across the country, we do a lot of that work. It's just we're trying to get we're trying to ameliorate the fact that we had this very steep decline in hiring female candidates. So I hope that my presentation, my report, isn't a reflection on the current zeal that I saw within the fire department in Minneapolis. Just more so, they're trying to quench the thirst of wanting to always improve, to always want to polish the stone.
Definitely, and I didn't take it that way. I saw it as our fire department at a national level is probably doing most fire departments. And at the same time, I know that we have a lot of staff that have been working on doing more recruitment of women firefighters. I know that we have had a lot of firefighters focusing on this, and at the same time, I still think there is a lot of ways that we can even support our firefighters in recruiting more women firefighters into the field. And I think when you look at other cities, I think it's an important thing to look into to see what the city can even do to even increase to make sure that we have more representation in the fire department. So I appreciate the presentation. I think it is very helpful. And you know, I've met with women firefighters. They have told me themselves on how they want more support. So I think this is reflective of that as well. And Councilmember Pomosano.
Mr. Chair, and to the presenter, do you know what year the fire department moved to the CPAT as the physical exam? And does it correlate with your data?
I want to say 1998, 1999. I have to look back at my notes, but I think that's is close to the creation of the CPAT, which is like 1998, so around 1999, 2000. And I will say with the CPAT was, the origin of the CPAT was to create a more equitable physical abilities test. And that was the purpose of it. And I think what this provides us an opportunity, because a lot of folks did talk about going after D1 athletes to be able to do that. But I think also just creating within the program, within just what Minneapolis Fire Department does, of preparing folks for the CPAT and being able to be successful for it. But I also know, and Chief Tyner can comment on it, the CPAT, because it's a nationally recognized test, that's the reason, one of the reasons why we use it is because it's verified.
It does, I just want to point out, based on this bar graph, it does seem to have had an impact. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We really appreciate it. It was very enlightening. No one else is on queue, so seeing no further questions, I'll direct the clerk to receive and file that update. And seeing no further business before us, I will declare this meeting adjourned.